What's the worst thing your daughter ever told you? My angelic 9-year-old daughter Malia took a pair of scissors to her sister's hand-sewn wedding dress. I woke up to Lee sobbing in her room, holding the remains of the dress she'd dreamed of wearing on. She'd spent the last 6 months designing and sewing it herself, covering it in hand-sewn crystals, planning to launch her own bridal design business after the wedding. Malia was sitting on her own bed when I found her, the fabric scissors still on her desk. "Did you do this?" I asked, unable to believe it. She nodded but wouldn't say why. My girls adored each other despite the age gap, and Malia had even spent hours helping Lee with the beading, telling everyone how beautiful her sister would look. "I don't want her to get married," was all Malia would say, over and over. I spent the morning trying to salvage something for Lee, but the dress was destroyed beyond repair. Lee's fiancé Wade came by that afternoon with a replacement dress he'd somehow found, acting like a hero. But something felt off about how quickly he'd produced a wedding dress in the exact right size. That evening, while Lee got ready at the hotel with her bridesmaids, I sat with Malia trying to understand. "Are you sad about Lee moving out?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "Then why, sweetheart?" She looked at her hands and said quietly, "Wade is mean to Lee when you're not there." I asked what she meant, but she just said, "He makes her cry but tells her not to tell anyone." She was only 9, too young to explain properly, but something in her voice made me pay attention. I went through Lee's old room while she was gone, feeling guilty but needing answers. In her journal, the recent entries were different from her usual cheerful writing. "Wade says I'm getting fat before the wedding. And Wade didn't like me having lunch with my coworkers. And Wade thinks my dress makes me look stupid, but I worked so hard on it." The entries went back 6 months, each one showing more control, more criticism, more isolation from friends. I called Lee's best friend Rachel, who wasn't even in the wedding party for reasons Lee had refused to explain to me. "I've been worried about her," Rachel admitted. "Wade doesn't let her hang out with us anymore. He says we're bad influences." She told me about seeing bruises on Lee's wrist last month, but Lee said she'd caught it in her car door. While searching for more information, I found Malia's iPad and saw she'd been recording videos on it. One from last week showed Wade in our kitchen while I was at work. He was telling Lee her dress looked like trash and threatening to humiliate her at the wedding if she wore it. Lee was crying but trying to stand up for herself. "I worked so hard on this," she said. "That's the problem," he replied. "You care more about that stupid dress than me." Malia had been recording from behind the door, and you could hear her little gasp when Wade grabbed Lee's arm. In Malia's room, I found a notebook where she'd been writing. At the bottom, from yesterday, it said, "Lee was crying in the bathroom and said, 'I have to marry him or he'll do something bad. I don't want her to go.'" I searched Wade's name online, and after scrolling through several pages of normal results, I found social media posts from his ex-girlfriend Valerie from 2 years ago. There were vague references to having to get a restraining order and posts about surviving an abusive relationship. One post said, "He isolated me from everyone who could help," with dozens of supportive comments. Another said, "Leaving him was the scariest thing I ever did," before her account went private. Shaking, I tried calling Lee, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Her bridesmaid texted saying they were at the venue, but Lee had left with Wade an hour ago, saying they needed to talk privately before the ceremony. They were supposed